At last, after months of royal duties, press obligations, and diplomatic meetings, King Edward of Denmark and his beloved wife, Queen Paige Morgan, finally find a window of freedom. With winter snow blanketing Europe and the Christmas season casting a magical glow over the continent, they secretly board a royal jet bound for Belavia, a small, picturesque kingdom nestled in the mountains, known for its luxurious ski resorts and breathtaking alpine views. Disguised in casual clothes and using fake names on their travel documents, Mr. and Mrs. Jensen, Edward and Paige are determined to escape the pressures of palace life and enjoy a normal honeymoon. Their arrival at the majestic Grand Belavia Lodge is greeted only by the concierge and a cozy fire crackling in the stone hearth. The hotel manager, a charming and overly helpful man named Lars, seems suspicious of their low profile, but politely plays along. Snowflakes twirl through the air as Paige opens the balcony doors to a sweeping view of the forested peaks. "It's perfect," she whispers, smiling as Edward wraps his arms around her from behind. "Finally, just you and me. No cameras, no crowns." That evening, the couple dines in the lodge's private restaurant, laughing over hot fondue and sipping mulled wine. Edward attempts to be anonymous, but can't help giving off royal vibes. He holds the door for everyone, insists on helping the waitress carry plates, and starts a snowball fight with a group of children outside the lodge. As they settle in for the night, Paige teases him. "You know, for someone trying to blend in, you're really bad at going unnoticed." Edward grins and replies, "Maybe I'll need a fake mustache next time." Outside, the snow continues to fall softly, blanketing the resort in silence. Inside, Edward and Paige hold hands by the fireplace, unaware that their peaceful escape is about to be disrupted by a political scandal, environmental destruction, and an unexpected blast from Paige's past. The next morning, Edward and Paige rise early, bundled in knit scarves and ski gear, ready to explore Belavia's pristine mountain trails. Guided by a young and enthusiastic local named Mila, they embark on a snowshoeing tour deep into the heart of the forest. Towering pine trees stretch toward the sky, their branches heavy with snow. The air is crisp and fresh, untouched by industry, and animal tracks crisscross the powdery paths. "This place feels like something out of a fairy tale," Paige says, snapping photos with her phone. Edward nods, impressed by the unspoiled landscape. "It's the kind of place that makes you want to forget about the world." As they hike, Mila's tone shifts. She gestures to a cluster of bright orange ribbons tied around several trees. They mark the area for clearing. Word is, Prime Minister Polonius has approved an oil drilling project. He says it'll bring jobs, but we all know it's about lining his own pockets. Edward and Paige stop in their tracks. "Oil drilling?" Paige asks, stunned. "Here? In a national forest?" Mila lowers her voice. "They're keeping it quiet, but the bulldozers are scheduled to start right after New Year's. The Prime Minister pushed it through without consulting the people. Many of us are furious, but speaking up can be dangerous." As they continue the tour, Edward grows tense. He's willing to destroy all this for oil? Paige can see the concern brewing in his eyes, the king in him awakening. Later that evening, back at the lodge, Edward searches the Belavian news on his tablet. There's barely a mention of the drilling. Just one article, buried deep, about an economic development initiative led by Polonius Industries. Paige peers over his shoulder. They're hiding it from the public, she says. We have to do something. Edward hesitates. This is their country. It's not our place to intervene. But we're here. We see what's happening, Paige replies firmly. And if we can help, even just a little, we should try. As snow continues to fall outside their window, the Royal Honeymoon begins to shift. What was meant to be a romantic escape is slowly turning into a moral mission. Neither of them knows just how complicated and personal it's about to become. The next day, Edward and Paige venture into Belavia's charming village square for the Christmas market. Twinkling lights crisscross overhead, and wooden stalls brim with handmade crafts, roasted chestnuts, and steaming mugs of cocoa. For a moment, the tension from the previous day lifts, and they allow themselves to relax among the locals. As Paige examines a hand-carved nativity set, a familiar voice calls out behind her. Paige Morgan? She freezes. Turning around, her eyes widen. Standing in front of her is Scott Parker, her ex-boyfriend from med school. He looks slightly older, rugged in a flannel jacket, his boyish smile just as she remembers. Scott? Paige blurts. What are you doing here? I should ask you the same. He laughs. I live here now. I moved to Belavia last year, working with a private environmental consulting firm. Small world, huh? Just then, Edward approaches with 2 cups of cocoa, handing one to Paige before noticing Scott. His smile falters. Scott Parker, Scott says, offering a hand. And you are? Edward, he replies curtly, taking the handshake with an eyebrow raised. Paige jumps in quickly. This is my husband, King Edward of Denmark. Scott's eyes widen. Whoa. Okay, wow. I didn't expect... He chuckles awkwardly. A royal upgrade. Congratulations, Edward, forces a smile. Yes, well, pleasure. As the three chat, Edward watches Scott closely. His smiles seem a little too familiar, his compliments just a touch too warm. And when Scott mentions how he and Paige used to pull all-nighters over anatomy flashcards, Edward nearly chokes on his cocoa. Later, as they walk back to the lodge, Edward stays uncharacteristically quiet. You're doing that royal brooding thing? Paige teases gently. I don't brood, he mutters. She nudges him. Is this about Scott? Edward sighs. He just showed up out of nowhere, in Belavia, of all places. And he works in environmental consulting? That's a little too convenient. Paige laughs. You think he moved across the world, got a job in sustainability, and waited around just in case I'd show up on my honeymoon? Edward doesn't laugh. I think I don't trust him. Paige reaches for his hand. You have nothing to worry about. I married you, remember? But as they return to their suite, Edward glances back over his shoulder, where Scott stands near the lodge steps, watching them go with a thoughtful look on his face. Something tells Edward this reunion is more than just a coincidence. Back in their suite, the romantic glow of the honeymoon has dimmed as Edward and Paige huddle over the few pieces of evidence they've gathered. Maps Mila gave them of the forest, marked drilling zones, and the lone buried article Edward found online. The fire crackles, but the mood is tense. Edward folds his arms. If Polonius starts drilling, this forest won't survive the winter. And from what we've seen, no one here has the power or courage to stop him. Paige paces. We can't just let it happen. This place, it's too special. People live here. Wildlife depends on these woods. I became a doctor to help people, and this feels the same, just bigger. Edward nods, slowly warming to the idea. Then we fight, together. Despite their best efforts to keep a low profile, Edward discreetly arranges a meeting with Belavia's Deputy Environment Minister using royal diplomatic channels. Paige reaches out to Mila, asking her to quietly connect them with local environmental activists. Meanwhile, their romantic plans, skiing, sleigh rides, hot tub evenings, are all put on pause. The hotel staff, puzzled by their increasingly strange schedule and whispered phone calls, begin to suspect the Jensens are far more important than they claimed. In the lodge's cozy business center, Edward and Paige piece together their approach, gather facts, rally local support, and bring international attention to Polonius's plans. Edward writes to the Danish press under an anonymous tip, careful not to reveal their location, while Paige helps draft a petition for the Belavian people. During one late-night strategy session, Paige glances at her husband, his sleeves rolled up, hair messy, completely immersed in blueprints of the forest. "You know," she says softly, "this wasn't exactly what I pictured for our honeymoon." Edward looks up and grins. "Same, but I'd rather fight to save a forest with you than sit in a hot tub with anyone else." They share a laugh and a long kiss before getting back to work. The stakes are rising. Their honeymoon may be on hold, but their love, stronger than ever, is fueling a mission that could change everything. With the help of Mila and Scott, who surprisingly offers critical insight into Belavia's environmental laws, Edward and Paige manage to secure an informal meeting with Prime Minister Polonius under the pretense of being foreign investors with sustainability concerns. Though reluctant at first, Polonius agrees, intrigued by the prospect of royal influence behind the curtain. The meeting takes place in a grand but cold government building in Belavia's capital. Polonius, a gruff and calculating man with slicked-back silver hair and a permanent smirk, welcomes them with carefully measured charm. King Edward, Queen Paige, or shall I say, Mr. and Mrs. Jensen, he says, gesturing to their aliases. "You've been quite busy during your little getaway." Edward keeps his composure. "We were hoping to enjoy a peaceful honeymoon, but we couldn't ignore what's happening to your forests." Paige leans in. "You're about to destroy a protected ecosystem for short-term profit. These trees are hundreds of years old, and the wildlife—" Polonius raises a hand, cutting her off. "Spare me the moral lecture. I'm not drilling for oil because I want to. I'm doing it because I have to." He walks over to a large window overlooking the capital. "Belavia is broke. Our economy is crumbling. Tourism can't cover the debt left by the previous administration. The oil reserves beneath those forests are the only lifeline we have left." Edward narrows his eyes. "So instead of investing in long-term sustainable development, you're selling out Belavia's future for a quick fix." Polonius turns sharply. "Easy for you to say, Your Majesty. Denmark has wealth, global influence, and a press that still fawns over your wedding. Belavia has none of that. I'm doing what I must to keep this country afloat." Paige takes a step forward. "By bulldozing the heart of it, you'll poison the water, drive away tourism, and damage your people's trust. You think oil money will fix that?" Polonius scoffs. "People don't want truth, they want jobs, and I plan to give them that while making sure I remain in office long enough to benefit." The tension thickens. Edward's voice drops to a warning tone. "If you go through with this, we will expose you, publicly." Polonius leans in, smug. "Then I'll simply remind the world that a foreign royal interfered in sovereign affairs while on vacation. Not exactly a good look, is it? As the couple exits the building, shaken but resolute, Paige mutters, "He's not just corrupt, he's dangerous." Edward replies, "Then it's time we stop playing nice." Their mission has just become personal and far more dangerous than either of them expected. The snow continues to fall as Edward and Paige return to the Grand Belavia Lodge, now fully aware that their honeymoon has become a battleground. Prime Minister Polonius's plan is far more aggressive and far more imminent than they feared. But rather than retreat, they dig in deeper. Polonius is counting on fear and silence, Edward tells Paige. Let's give him neither. They begin by enlisting the help of Mila, whose passion for her homeland runs deep. She connects them with a group of local environmentalists, students, professors, farmers, and forest guides, who have been quietly organizing under threat of arrest and harassment. Paige speaks to them at a hidden cafe in the village outskirts. "This isn't just about trees," she says, voice clear and steady. "It's about who gets to decide Belavia's future. Not one man, all of you." Meanwhile, Edward uses his royal connections to reach out to European news outlets, leveraging his name to spark international interest, without directly implicating Denmark. A Danish journalist friend agrees to run the story as a leaked whistleblower report, tied to unnamed royal sources. The clock is ticking. Scott, seeing Paige and Edward working as a team, starts to pull his weight too. He provides technical reports from his environmental firm, proving that the oil extraction will contaminate Belavia's only clean aquifer. Despite Edward's lingering jealousy, he begins to see Scott's sincerity and realizes that while he may be part of Paige's past, he could be an ally in the present. The royal couple's presence inspires courage. Local artists paint protest signs. Musicians organize a rally. A small group of grandmothers bake hundreds of cookies to hand out at sit-ins. Children in ski gear pass out flyers to tourists. Paige and Edward even sneak into a community radio station, broadcasting a live message urging people to come to the forest edge on Christmas Eve, when the first bulldozers are set to arrive. That night, back at the lodge, exhausted and exhilarated, Edward and Paige lie on the couch, wrapped in blankets. Paige rests her head on his chest. "We're supposed to be sipping cocoa in a hot tub," she murmurs. He kisses her forehead. "This is better. We're actually doing something." She smiles. "Let's just hope it's enough." Outside, the village is stirring. Snow falls silently, but within the stillness, the people of Belavia are beginning to rise. The campaign to save Belavia's forests is gaining momentum, and with each day, more locals join the cause. Protest signs line the village square. The press begins sniffing around, and whispers of Prime Minister Polonius's corruption start circulating on international blogs. Amid the chaos, Scott continues to be a surprisingly helpful asset. Too helpful in Edward's eyes. In a tense planning meeting at the Lodge Cafe, Scott arrives late with new intel. "Satellite images from this morning," he says, tossing a folder on the table. "Bulldozers have already arrived at the base camp. We've got less than 72 hours. Edward stiffens. "And how exactly did you get satellite images?" "I know people," Scott shrugs, "just trying to help." Edward exchanges a wary glance with Paige. The tension between the two men is palpable, their interactions clipped and laced with veiled jabs. Later, Paige pulls Edward aside. You've been glaring at him like he's a Bond villain. Edward folds his arms. I don't like how comfortable he is around you, or how he looks at you. He's not the one I married, Paige says softly. You are. But that night, as Paige and Scott stay up late reviewing maps and permits, their conversation drifts into personal territory. I remember when you used to drink 3 cups of coffee before exams, Scott says with a grin. You were unstoppable. Paige chuckles, surprised by the flood of memories. I was trying to prove I belonged. Med school was intimidating. You always belonged, he says, his voice suddenly softer. I blew it back then. I wasn't ready for someone like you. Paige glances down. A lot's changed since then. Just then, Edward walks in, clearly having overheard part of the exchange. The room goes still. Scott excuses himself awkwardly, leaving Paige and Edward alone. Edward's jaw is tight. So, catching up on old times? Paige sighs. Don't you do this. You know how much I love you. It's not about you, he replies. It's about him. I don't trust that he doesn't still want something. Even if he does, she says gently, it doesn't change how I feel. I chose you, Ed. Again and again, I choose you. Edward softens, but the unease lingers. As the battle for the forest intensifies, so does the emotional complexity of their honeymoon-turned-crisis. Saving Belavia will require their full trust in one another. But jealousy, old wounds, and rising pressure are threatening to divide them just when they need unity most. The snow falls heavier now, blanketing Belavia in a stillness that feels almost surreal compared to the storm brewing beneath. The protests have gone from whispers to full voices, marches in the square, chants at the forest edge, and candlelit vigils outside Parliament. But within the eye of the storm, Edward and Paige find themselves on unsteady ground, not just politically, but personally. After days of stress, sleepless nights, and simmering tensions, Paige finally pulls Edward aside during a late-night strategy meeting in their suite. We need a break, she says, gently tugging his hand. Just 1 hour. No maps, no rally planning, no Scott, no Polonius. Just us. Edward hesitates, then nods. They sneak out into the quiet woods just beyond the resort, walking under a canopy of stars and snow-covered trees. The moonlight turns the landscape silver. They stop by a frozen lake, silent for a moment, letting the cold air clear their minds. Paige turns to him. I know this hasn't been the honeymoon we dreamed of, but I also know I wouldn't trade this for anything, because we're in it together. Edward looks at her, eyes searching. Even with everything going on, with him showing up, with Polonius threatening the country, you'd still say that? She places her gloved hand against his cheek. Yes, because this, us, is the constant. The noise will come and go, but you're the one I come home to. Always. Edward exhales, his breath curling in the air like mist. I let jealousy get in the way. I let the pressure twist me up. I'm sorry. No more apologies, she smiles. Just promises. He pulls her into a kiss, slow and deep, the kind that feels like grounding in a snowstorm. When they pull apart, Edward grins. Well then, shall we continue saving a country together? Absolutely, Paige says. But next honeymoon? No exes, no corrupt politicians, and at least one uninterrupted hot tub night. They both laugh, then walk back toward the lodge, hand in hand, more in sync than ever. Their love, once tested by thrones and royal expectations, is now stronger because of shared purpose. And as dawn begins to break over the mountains, the The royal couple is ready, not just to fight for Belavia, but to protect each other, always. It's the morning of Christmas Eve, and Belavia wakes to a cold, crisp stillness, soon shattered by the rumble of distant machinery. The first bulldozers have arrived at the forest's edge. In the Grand Lodge, the suite becomes a war room. Maps, documents, laptops, and thermoses of strong coffee clutter every surface. Paige coordinates with local doctors and scientists to prepare environmental impact statements, while Edward is on the phone with a Danish journalist named Freya, who confirms the whistleblower expose will hit the front page by nightfall. The time is running out. Scott bursts in with a flash drive. I got into the municipal database. Polonius secretly redirected millions in government relief funds to a dummy corporation. Guess who owns it? Edward grabs the laptop, skimming the files. He owns the drilling company. Paige gasps. He's not just exploiting the land, he's profiting off both sides of the crisis. Mila rushes in. A reporter from the Belavia Times is willing to run the story, if we go on record. But if you two speak out publicly, there's no turning back. Edward and Paige exchange a look. Then we do it, Edward says firmly. Together. The next few hours are a blur of movement and urgency. The team splits up. Scott and Mila head to the media office with the flash drive, while Edward and Paige brave the snow to confront local leaders face to face. They gather allies, mayors, school teachers, clergy, anyone still willing to stand up. They pass out final flyers, calling for a peaceful demonstration that evening at the forest line, knowing it could be their last chance to stop the destruction. By dusk, Paige and Edward arrive at the protest site. Hundreds have gathered, families, farmers, students, all standing silently in the falling snow, candles in hand, facing the encroaching bulldozers. And just as the machines begin to rev, boom, a blaring news alert breaks across cell phones. The expose has gone live. The headline flashes: Belavia's Prime Minister caught in oil scandal. Foreign royals help uncover corruption. Cheers erupt. Protesters chant. Some of the construction workers even shut down their engines and step back. Edward wraps his arm around Paige, whispering, "We did it." But in the distance, dark cars begin arriving. Government black sedans, and one very familiar figure stepping out. Prime Minister Polonius has arrived, and he doesn't look like he plans to go down without a fight. Night has fully fallen, and tension crackles through the freezing air. The candlelit protest holds strong, but the arrival of Prime Minister Polonius, flanked by bodyguards and grim-faced officials, sends a wave of unease through the crowd. Polonius approaches the protest line with smug defiance. "You've made your noise. Congratulations. But this land is under my jurisdiction, and the equipment rolls forward at dawn." He leans in toward Edward and Paige. "You may have the people for now, but I have the power." As he retreats to his car, the crowd murmurs anxiously. Paige turns to Edward, eyes blazing. He's stalling. He knows the story's out, but he's still betting he can bulldoze his way through before the law catches up. Back at the lodge, the core team regroups. Mila, Scott, Edward, and Paige huddle in a candlelit side room, the fire casting long shadows on the walls. Emotions run high. Frustration, desperation, determination. "We need to delay them until the Royal Council and legal orders can take effect," Paige says. Scott nods slowly. "Then we hit them where it hurts. Their equipment." Everyone looks at him. "I'm not talking destruction," he clarifies quickly. but sabotage, temporary, non-violent, enough to freeze operations. Edward hesitates. You mean sabotage a multinational drilling project on foreign soil during our honeymoon? Scott shrugs. Technically, it's Christmas Eve. Paige grins. Let's do it. That night, bundled in black ski gear and carrying tools, flashlights, and borrowed thermal drones, the team moves through the trees like shadows. Mila navigates. Scott handles the technical details. Paige disables ignition wiring on a few key bulldozers. Edward uses a royal-issued satellite phone to jam communications on the site. They work fast and quietly, hearts pounding with every snap of a twig. Every minute counts. Suddenly, spotlights flare. One of the guards stirs. Go, Edward whispers. The team scatters into the trees, snow flying under their boots. Breath clouds the air as they dart through the moonlit forest. For a moment, it feels like a lost ski chase from a spy film. Eventually, they regroup at the edge of the woods, panting and laughing breathlessly. We did it, Scott says, grinning. At least for now. They'll need a full day to bring in replacements. And by then, Paige says, holding up her buzzing phone, Belavia's parliament will have convened in emergency session. The plan has worked. The clock is reset. The forest gets one more day of life. As they return to the lodge, Edward wraps his coat around Paige's shoulders. Best royal honeymoon ever, he says, smirking. She bumps his shoulder playfully. Next time, fewer black ops, more massages. The tension in the air was palpable as Edward and Paige strode into the lavish conference room where Polonius sat, his smirk never fading. The grand windows overlooked the sprawling city, but all of Belavia seemed to hang in the balance in this moment. Edward's hand tightened on the back of the chair as he stood across from Polonius, his eyes cold with determination. We know what you've been planning. Edward's voice was steady, but it held an underlying fury that was hard to ignore. The illegal drilling, the destruction of our forests, all for the sake of corporate greed. It ends now. Polonius leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him, his expression a mix of amusement and mockery. You think you can stop me, Edward? You've been a puppet to your people's whims, always reacting, never leading. Paige stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. It's not just about you anymore, Polonius. We've spoken to the people. We've found evidence, undeniable proof, and the truth is already out there. Your empire of lies is crumbling. At the signal, a group of reporters who had been waiting outside were ushered in. Cameras flashed as they began to capture every word, every motion in the room. Edward and Paige had been preparing for this moment for weeks, gathering evidence, lining up allies, and making sure they had everything they needed to expose the truth to the world. Paige took a deep breath, her voice clear and unwavering. We've shared Polonius's secret deals with environmental corporations. We've shown his ties to the oil giants, willing to sacrifice our land, our heritage, all for profit. We've secured testimonies and official documents. You can't escape this. The people of Belavia will never stand for it. The room fell silent, the weight of their words sinking in. Polonius's eyes flashed, no longer filled with amusement, but with cold calculation. He rose to his feet, his calm exterior cracking. You'll regret this. You both will. Do you really think the world will side with you? A prince and a commoner trying to bring down a legacy that's been centuries in the making. Edward's jaw tightened, but there was no hesitation in his response. The people will side. with what's right. And so will I. Before Polonius could respond, Paige moved forward with her own carefully orchestrated plan. In fact, I think it's time we let everyone see just how deep your corruption runs. She clicked a button on the device in her hand, and the screen behind them flickered to life. It displayed a series of damning images, documents showing Polonius's financial ties to international oil corporations, photographs of off-the-record meetings, and conversations where he promised vast sums for illegal drilling permits. The reporters gasped. Polonius froze, his face turning a shade paler. The truth was out there for all to see. The moment of his exposure had arrived. Edward spoke again, his voice ringing out with unshakable confidence. Your plan has failed. The people of Belavia will rise up, and they'll make sure nothing like this happens again. This is the end for you, Polonius. The reporters were already asking questions, shouting out to be heard over the commotion. The public was beginning to turn. In that moment, Polonius's reign of manipulation came to an abrupt halt, and for the first time, he realized there was no way out. He turned, fury in his eyes, but it was too late. Paige and Edward had already won. The very air seemed to change after the confrontation. The streets of Belavia, once filled with whispers of uncertainty, were now electric with purpose. News of Polonius's downfall spread like wildfire, igniting the hearts of the citizens who had long been wary of his influence. For the first time in years, they felt empowered, united by a common cause, the preservation of their beloved forests and the future of their kingdom. Edward and Paige stood on the balcony of the palace, overlooking the city that had once felt distant, disconnected. Now, it felt like home, alive with the fervor of the people who had begun to rally around them. Across the square below, crowds had gathered. At first, it was a trickle of people, then a swell of voices, until it became a massive sea of supporters, waving banners and chanting slogans for the environment. The heart of Belavia was beating with the pulse of hope, and the royal couple had become the symbol of that hope. Edward could feel the weight of the moment. He had known this day might come, but seeing it unfold in front of him was something else entirely. Paige, standing by his side, her eyes focused on the crowd, squeezed his hand. "We did it," she whispered, though there was no doubt in her voice. "It's only just begun," Edward replied, his voice low but filled with resolve. "This is more than exposing Polonius. It's about giving the people back their voice, giving them the power to shape their future." Paige nodded. She had seen the passionate faces in the crowd, people from all walks of life, farmers, environmental activists, children, and the elderly alike. Their common purpose was something far greater than any royal decree. It was a movement fueled by love for their land and a vision of a sustainable future. As they stepped down from the balcony to meet their people, the roar of the crowd grew louder. The energy was contagious, and even the royal guards, once stiff and formal, found themselves caught up in the wave of enthusiasm. "Edward! Paige!" a woman shouted from the crowd, holding a child in her arms. "You saved our forests! You saved our future!" The crowd erupted into cheers at her words, and others followed suit, chanting their names in unison. Paige's heart swelled with emotion. This was the moment she had always dreamed of. Not the recognition, but the feeling of being part of something larger than herself, something that truly mattered. In the days that followed, rallies and protests blossomed across Belavia. Citizens organized cleanups, tree plantings, and forums to discuss conservation efforts. Edward and Paige tirelessly visited local communities, engaging with the people, listening to their concerns, and offering support. Edward, once a prince bound by the weight of royal tradition, had become the face of a new era for Belavia. Paige, though not born into royalty, was now a beacon of hope, a symbol of grassroots activism in a world where power often resided in the hands of the few. Together, they proved that change was not just possible, but inevitable when people stood united for what they believed in. Their efforts were not without obstacles. Polonius, though defeated, had allies who were not willing to let go of the power and wealth they had accumulated. But the people of Belavia, now fully awakened and empowered, were determined to keep their leaders accountable. Paige stood at the front of a town hall meeting, addressing a packed room filled with supporters, activists, and local leaders. Her voice carried the weight of conviction as she spoke about the importance of long-term sustainability, about ensuring that Belavia's natural beauty would be protected for generations to come. "This is only the beginning," Paige said, her words ringing true as the room fell silent. "Together, we have exposed the corruption that threatened our land. But now, we must ensure that we build something lasting, something that will outlast us all. This is a fight we cannot afford to lose." The room erupted into applause, and Edward, standing by her side, nodded in agreement. Paige is right. This isn't about me. This isn't about her. It's about all of us. It's about the future of Belavia. As the crowd cheered, Edward and Paige shared a quiet, knowing glance. The road ahead would not be easy, but they were no longer alone. The people of Belavia had risen with them, and together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, bound by a shared vision for a brighter, greener future. The dust had settled, but the air still hummed with the energy of a revolution. The people of Belavia, once divided by corruption and deceit, now stood united under the banner of conservation. Yet, even as the kingdom shifted, there were still fractures to mend, and the path to securing Belavia's future was not without its challenges. Edward and Paige had spent the past few days meeting with environmentalists, government officials, and members of the Royal Council, strategizing how best to preserve their hard-won victory. The pressure to maintain the momentum was mounting, and Edward could feel the weight of leadership pressing against him. But amidst the chaos, there was a surprising development. Scott, Paige's ex-boyfriend, had returned to Belavia. His arrival was met with suspicion. The man who had once been a thorn in Edward's side, a reminder of the past Paige was trying to leave behind, now stood at the gates of the palace, requesting a meeting. "I didn't expect this," Edward said, as he and Paige stood in the royal chambers, preparing for the meeting. "After everything that happened, I thought Scott would stay out of it." Paige looked at him, a trace of uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "I thought so too, but I've learned to expect the unexpected. Let's hear what he has to say." When Scott entered the room, his demeanor was different than it had been during their past encounters. There was no smugness, no attitude of competition. Instead, he seemed focused, serious, perhaps even a little weary. "I know you're both wondering why I'm here," Scott began, glancing between Edward and Paige. "The truth is, I've been doing a lot of thinking. I may have been a fool in the past, but I'm not blind. I can see what's happening in Belavia. I see the movement you've sparked, and I want to be a part of it. Edward raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. What's in this for you, Scott? After everything, why should we trust you? Scott met Edward's gaze squarely, unflinching. Because I'm not the same person I was. I've seen the consequences of Polonius's greed firsthand, and it's not just about politics anymore. This is about the future of the people I care about Belavia, the land, and the legacy we leave. If that's not worth fighting for, then I don't know what is. Paige stood silently, her heart uncertain. It was a lot to take in, especially after everything Scott had put her through. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw something different. There was sincerity there, perhaps the sincerity she had never seen from him before. Scott continued, his voice firm. I've spoken with some of my old connections, and I've arranged a meeting with some key figures who still have influence over the resources Polonius left behind. They're not happy with how he handled things, and they want to find a way to reverse the damage he caused. If you'll trust me, I can help you gain leverage over the council and ensure that your conservation efforts succeed. Edward exchanged a glance with Paige. The weight of the decision hung in the air. Trust was fragile, especially in a kingdom so torn by betrayal and greed. But there was a part of Paige that understood. This was more than a personal redemption for Scott. It was a chance for him to make amends, to prove he could be something more than a symbol of her past mistakes. Paige turned to Edward, her voice soft but resolute. I think we should give him a chance. Edward didn't answer immediately. He knew the stakes were high, and trusting someone like Scott was a risk. But as he thought about the bigger picture, about the future of Belavia, about what they were fighting for, he realized that perhaps, just perhaps, Scott's redemption could play a part in saving the kingdom. All right, Edward said at last, his voice steady. We'll work together, but remember, Scott, you're not just helping us, you're helping everyone in Belavia. Don't forget that. Scott nodded, the weight of his responsibility settling on his shoulders. I won't let you down. The next few weeks were filled with frantic meetings and behind-the-scenes maneuvering. Scott leveraged his old connections, managing to get a seat at the table with influential figures who had once been part of Polonius's circle. Some were reluctant, others skeptical, but Scott's persistence and newfound sincerity slowly earned their trust. As tensions eased, Edward, Paige, and Scott worked together, navigating the complex political landscape to push forward their environmental policies. Slowly but surely, their efforts began to take root, gaining support from the people, from the council, and even from members of the royal family who had once opposed them. For Paige, seeing Scott's transformation was a reminder that people could change, that even the most difficult pasts could be rewritten with hard work and genuine effort. And as the days passed, with Scott now an ally instead of a rival, she began to feel a sense of peace about the past, about her relationship with him, and about the future with Edward. The journey was far from over, but with Scott at their side, the road ahead seemed just a little bit clearer. Together, they were one step closer to securing Belavia's future and their own. After weeks of tension, political battles, and sleepless nights, the threat that had loomed over Belavia for so long was finally over. Polonius had been exposed, the environmental damage had been halted. The Royal Council had aligned behind Edward and Paige, and the people had rallied in support of their efforts. Now, at long last, the weight of the kingdom's future was off their shoulders. It was time to focus on themselves, to enjoy the happiness they had fought so hard for. Edward and Paige stood at the edge of a cliff, gazing out over Belavia's breathtaking landscapes. The lush green forests stretched for miles, a testament to the preservation they had fought for. The sun was setting behind the mountains, casting the entire kingdom in a golden glow, and the cool breeze carried the fresh scent of pine and earth. It was a perfect day. "We did it," Paige whispered, her voice full of awe as she watched the colors of the sky change. She could feel the relief in her bones, the peace that had been missing for so long. Edward smiled beside her, his arm around her waist. "We did. But it's not just about the victory. It's about everything we've learned, everything we've been through together. I wouldn't change a thing." Paige turned to face him, her heart swelling with emotion. "I used to think I was alone in this world. But now, I see that I've always had you by my side, and together, we can do anything." Edward gently cupped her face in his hands, his eyes full of love. "You've shown me what it means to truly fight for something, and to fight for someone." With a soft laugh, Paige leaned into his touch. "Well, I always believed in fighting for the things that matter." Edward pulled her closer, his lips meeting hers in a tender kiss. It was a kiss that spoke of relief, of love, and of the promise of a future together, one that was theirs to shape, free from the shadows of the past. After a few moments, they pulled apart, and Paige took a deep breath. "So, where to now?" Edward grinned, a playful glint in his eyes. "Now, we enjoy our honeymoon. We've earned it. No more politics, no more worries, just us and Belavia." They spent the next few days traveling through the idyllic landscapes of their kingdom, the beauty of Belavia unfolding before them at every turn. From the charming cobblestone streets of the capital to the serene, sparkling lakes nestled in the mountains, each stop was more picturesque than the last. They walked hand in hand through meadows of wildflowers, laughed as they rode horseback through the forests, and enjoyed peaceful moments on quiet beaches, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The simplicity of it all, away from the pressures of the palace and the weight of their responsibilities, was exactly what they both needed. It was a chance to reconnect, to rediscover the joy in being together without the world watching. One afternoon, they found themselves by a serene lake, surrounded by towering pine trees. They had rented a small cabin nearby, a peaceful escape from the world. Paige kicked off her shoes and dipped her toes into the cool water, letting out a sigh of contentment. Edward sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders as they watched the ripples in the water. "This is perfect," Paige said, leaning her head against his. "It feels like everything we've worked for has led to this moment. Peace, quiet, just being together." Edward smiled, pulling her closer. "And it's only the beginning. We have all the time in the world now. No more battles, no more doubts. Just the future ahead of us." Paige looked up at him, her heart full. "I never thought I'd be here in this place with you. But now that I am, I can't imagine being anywhere else." With a soft laugh, Edward kissed the top of her head. "Good, because I'm not letting you go." The days drifted by in a blur of warmth and happiness, and the stresses of the world seemed like distant memories. They had earned this time of peace, and every moment was a gift they cherished. As they traveled through Belavia's majestic landscapes, Edward and Paige finally allowed themselves to embrace the love they had fought so hard to protect. In the midst of the beauty of the land and the serenity of their time together, they found not only joy, but also the certainty that whatever the future held, they would face it together, side by side. As the days of their honeymoon came to a close, Edward and Paige found themselves yearning to connect with the people of Belavia, the very individuals who had supported them through every challenge, every victory. The beauty of the land was unparalleled, but it was the heart of the people that truly made it home. Word had spread that the royal couple was in the countryside, and the locals, ever warm and welcoming, invited them to join in a grand celebration in a small village nestled at the base of the mountains. It was a festival of harvest where the fields and orchards would be honored, and the hard work of the season would be celebrated with food, music, and laughter. Edward and Paige, eager to experience life outside the royal bubble, agreed to attend. Dressed simply, in flowing clothes that matched the warm hues of the harvest, they arrived at the village square with bright smiles and open hearts. The village was alive with color. Vibrant banners hung from every corner, and long tables were adorned with baskets overflowing with freshly harvested fruits, vegetables, and freshly baked bread. As they entered the square, the people turned to see them, their expressions filled with surprise and excitement. There were no grand ceremonies, no royal procession, just Edward and Paige, eager to celebrate alongside the villagers. A woman with a basket of apples approached, her face alight with a smile. "Welcome, your majesties. We're so glad you could join us." Edward smiled, offering her a warm handshake. "Please call us Edward and Paige. We're here to celebrate with you." The woman, delighted by his response, led them to a nearby table where musicians played lively folk tunes on fiddles, flutes, and drums. The air was filled with the scent of roasted meats and sweet pies, and children darted through the crowd, their laughter ringing out like bells. As the evening unfolded, Edward and Paige danced with the villagers, their movements light and carefree. Paige spun in a circle, her laughter mingling with the music as she danced with a group of local women. The men, including Edward, joined in, their steps synchronized to the rhythm of the music. It was a joyous celebration. No politics, no pressures, just pure, unbridled joy. They were quickly swept up in the warmth of the crowd. Edward found himself chatting with farmers, learning about the challenges they faced in keeping the land fertile and productive. Paige spent time talking to artisans and mothers, discussing how they could work together to bring more sustainable practices to the villages. "I never imagined it would feel like this," Paige said to Edward as they took a quiet moment away from the festivities, sitting under a sprawling oak tree. "I've always dreamed of connecting with the people of Belavia, but I never thought it would be so real." Edward nodded, his eyes scanning the scene around them. "This is what it's all about. These are the moments that matter, the connections we make with people. This is what we're fighting for." As the evening wore on, the celebration reached its peak with the lighting of lanterns. Hundreds of glowing lanterns were released into the sky, floating like stars above the village. The sight was magical, each lantern carrying a wish, a prayer, or a dream. Edward and Paige stood side by side, their hands intertwined, watching as the lights drifted upwards. "This is how we'll remember it," Paige whispered, her eyes tracing the lights above them. "The simple beauty of it all. The peace we've worked for. The people who made it possible." Edward turned to her, his heart full. "We'll never forget this night. These are the memories that will last forever." As the lanterns disappeared into the sky, Edward and Paige joined the villagers in a final dance, their joy and laughter echoing through the night air. The memories they made with the people of Belavia were not just for them, but for the kingdom. It was a celebration of the unity they had fought for, the love they had shared, and the future they would build together. When the night finally drew to a close, the royal couple took one last look at the village, now peaceful under the moonlit sky. The bonds they had forged with these people, the friendships they had created, would stand as a testament to their journey and to the enduring spirit of Belavia. They had not only saved the land, but had connected with the soul of the kingdom. As they left the village, the memories of that night lingered, unforgettable and everlasting. A reminder that it wasn't just the grand moments that mattered, but the ones spent with others, celebrating the beauty of life, love, and community. The evening had settled into a tranquil calm, the village celebration now a distant memory. Edward and Paige, tired but filled with contentment, had made their way back to the royal estate. As they strolled through the palace gardens, the soft glow of the lanterns that lined the pathways illuminated the lush landscape, casting shadows that danced in the breeze. Paige, still humming with the joy of the past few days, turned to Edward, her eyes twinkling. "I can't believe how much has happened. It feels like everything changed overnight." Edward smiled, his heart full as he took her hand in his. "It has. But Paige, I want you to know that even with everything changing around us, one thing will never change. I will always be by your side." They continued walking, the air cool and crisp, filled with the scent of jasmine and the distant rustling of the leaves. Edward led Paige to a secluded part of the garden that she had not yet explored, a small clearing surrounded by tall trees, where the sky stretched out in front of them, clear and starry. "Where are we going?" Paige asked, her curiosity piqued. Edward simply smiled, guiding her forward. "I have something special planned for you." They reached the center of the clearing, and Paige gasped in surprise. A large blanket had been spread on the grass, surrounded by dozens of flickering candles, their flames casting a soft, romantic glow. In the center of the blanket was a small table, set for two, with fine china, silver cutlery, and a bouquet of wildflowers in the center. A soft melody from a violin played faintly in the background, carried by the evening breeze. Paige looked up at Edward, her eyes wide. "Edward, this is incredible. But why all of this?" Edward turned to her, his expression filled with love and sincerity. "Paige, since the moment I met you, you've shown me a love and strength that I never knew I needed. You fought for Belavia, for its future, and you fought for us. Through all the chaos, all the uncertainty, you've never wavered. And I want to show you that no matter what happens, I will always fight for you." He took her hands in his gaze never leaving hers. "I want to reaffirm my commitment to you, to our love, and to the future we'll build together. This is just the beginning, Paige, and no matter what challenges lie ahead, I will always cherish every moment with you." A soft breeze blew through the trees, carrying the sweet scent of the flowers around them. Paige's eyes welled with tears, touched by the depth of his words. She had never expected such a grand gesture, not after everything they had already been through together. But in this moment, under the starlit sky, surrounded by the beauty of the garden and the warmth of Edward's love, everything felt right. She squeezed his hands, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "Edward, I don't even know how to put this into words, but you've already shown me everything I need. Your love, your trust, your strength. It's everything I could ever ask for. And I promise you, I will never stop fighting for us either. For you. For this." Edward smiled, his heart swelling as he leaned in to kiss her gently. The world seemed to stand still as their lips met, soft and tender, reaffirming the bond they had formed. It wasn't just a kiss, it was a promise, a vow that their love would remain steadfast through every storm, every challenge. As they pulled away, Edward gestured to the table. "Shall we? I thought we could share a quiet, peaceful meal together, just the two of us, and celebrate the new chapter of our lives." Paige nodded, smiling through the tears in her eyes. "I would love that." They sat down at the table, the night unfolding around them. The stars above twinkled brightly, a reflection of the love that had blossomed between them and the future that now lay before them, one full of endless possibilities. As they shared the meal, laughing, talking, and savoring each moment, the world around them seemed to fade away. There was only the two of them, together in this beautiful, peaceful moment, reaffirming their love and their bond under the vast, starlit sky. It was a night neither of them would ever forget, a moment of pure, unfiltered happiness and love, a reminder that no matter what the future held, they would always have each other. The night had grown deeper, the stars now dotting the sky like tiny diamonds scattered across a velvet blanket. The gentle hum of the evening breeze played softly around Edward and Paige as they walked hand in hand through the palace gardens. Their dinner was over, but the night was far from finished. As the candles flickered behind them, casting long shadows on the stone paths, they continued their stroll in peaceful silence. Edward looked over at Paige, her face bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight, a contented smile on her lips. It had been a long road to get here, a journey full of unexpected turns, challenges, and moments of doubt. But now, walking beside her in the quiet of the night, he felt a sense of peace that had eluded him for so long. Paige's voice broke the silence, soft but reflective. "Do you remember when we first met? How different everything felt then?" Edward chuckled lightly, the memory fresh in his mind. "I remember. You were so determined to make your own way, and I had no idea how to make sense of all the chaos in my life. You came into my world like a whirlwind, and I thought you were a dream. But then I realized you weren't a dream at all. You were exactly what I needed." Paige smiled, her heart swelling with the memory of those first moments with Edward, the uncertainty, the pull between duty and desire. "I never thought I would fall in love with someone so complicated, with everything I wanted for myself, everything I thought I needed. I didn't think I could love someone who had the weight of an entire kingdom on his shoulders. But then I saw you, really saw you, and I realized that you too were human. You didn't have all the answers, and that was okay." Edward paused, turning toward her. We've both had to change, haven't we? The person I was before meeting you, before all of this, he doesn't even seem real anymore. I've learned so much about myself, about what truly matters, and you've taught me that love isn't just something you feel. It's something you do, something you fight for, no matter the cost. Paige nodded, her eyes reflecting the starlight. And you've shown me the same. There were moments when I didn't think we would make it through, when the weight of everything, the pressure of the kingdom, the fear of losing each other, seemed too much to bear. But with you, I always felt like there was a way through. And now, looking back, I see that love was the answer all along. It's what carried us through everything. Not the victories, not the titles, just love. They walked a little further in silence, the weight of their journey settling around them like a quiet understanding. They had faced the impossible, political corruption, threats to their kingdom, and personal doubts that had tested the very core of their relationship. But through it all, they had held on to one another. Edward broke the silence again, his voice filled with quiet conviction. In the end, love conquers all, doesn't it? It's the one thing that remained constant, the one thing we could rely on when everything else was falling apart. Paige squeezed his hand, the truth of his words resonating in her heart. I never would have believed it if you told me back then. But now I know it's true. No matter how much we've been through, no matter how many obstacles we've faced, love has always been the reason we kept going. It's the foundation that everything else is built on. They reached a small stone bench by a fountain, the water rippling gently under the moonlight. Edward motioned for them to sit, and as they did, he pulled her closer, resting his arm around her shoulders. The quiet beauty of the night, the serenity that surrounded them, felt like a reflection of how far they had come. Do you ever think about what we've learned? Paige asked softly, her head resting on his shoulder. Every day, Edward replied. I've learned that love isn't just about passion or easy moments. It's about commitment, sacrifice, and standing by each other when the world is falling apart. And it's about letting go of our fears, trusting that we're strong enough to face whatever comes our way. Paige's fingers gently traced the lines of his hand, a soft smile on her lips. We've grown so much. We've both faced the things that scared us. Your role as prince, my place in this world. And we've still found a way to be together. And now, nothing feels impossible anymore. Edward nodded, his gaze never leaving hers. Because we have each other. And with that, we can face anything. No matter what the future holds for us, I know we'll be able to handle it. Because we're a team. Paige smiled, the love in her heart reflected in her eyes. Together, we're unstoppable. As the cool night air wrapped around them, the stars above twinkling in a perfect constellation, Edward and Paige realized that they had found their greatest strength, not in the titles they held or the battles they had won, but in the love they had built. It was the foundation of everything, and it had carried them through every challenge. They had emerged stronger, united, and ready to face whatever the future held, side by side. With their hearts intertwined and their spirits unbreakable, they knew one undeniable truth. Love in its purest form truly did conquer all. The journey back to Denmark felt surreal for Edward and Paige. After weeks of reflection, growth, and quiet celebration, the time had come to return to the kingdom that had always been their home, but felt different now. castle loomed ahead, its ancient stone walls a stark reminder of the responsibility that came with their titles. But it no longer seemed oppressive. Instead, it felt like a place they could reshape together, a place where they could continue their mission, inspired by the lessons they had learned on their travels. As they entered the Grand Hall, greeted by their royal advisors and staff, the familiar sight of the palace took on a new meaning. It was no longer just a symbol of power. It was now the backdrop to their shared vision of a better, more connected future. Edward and Paige had always known that their lives would be defined by duty. But now it was clear that their duty was not only to the people of Denmark, but to the land itself. They had seen the beauty of Belavia, its rolling hills, its vibrant forests, and its sparkling lakes. And they had experienced firsthand how the unity of a people and their love for nature could bring about change. In the days that followed their return, Edward and Paige set their sights on sharing their journey with their kingdom. They knew the importance of inspiring their people to cherish and protect the land that had sustained them for generations. Edward, standing before the gathered nobles, the council, and members of the press, began to speak with the passion and conviction that had grown in him during his time away. "My people," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "In Belavia, Paige and I witnessed something extraordinary. A people united not by wealth, nor by status, but by their love for their land. The beauty of their forests, their rivers, their fields. It was not just a part of their heritage, it was their future. We have returned with a renewed sense of purpose. It is not enough to simply protect what we have. We must nurture it, protect it, and pass it on to future generations." Paige stepped forward, her eyes meeting Edward's with a shared understanding. "During our time away, we saw firsthand how environmental conservation can transform a kingdom. It isn't just about preserving nature, it's about preserving our way of life. It's about ensuring that the children of Denmark will have the same access to the beauty and wonder of the natural world that we have. It is up to us to protect that legacy." Edward continued, his words carrying the weight of their journey. "We have already made strides in protecting our forests and our shores, but there is so much more to be done. We must think beyond just the next generation. We must think about the next 1,000 years. Our future depends on the choices we make today." In the days that followed, Edward and Paige launched a nationwide campaign, bringing together environmentalists, business leaders, and citizens from all walks of life to discuss sustainable practices. They traveled to the countryside, speaking at town halls, visiting local farmers, and attending conservation projects. Everywhere they went, they shared stories of Belavia's transformation, of how the people had risen to protect their land, and how the government, with the support of its citizens, had enacted policies to secure a green future. In one of their most heartfelt speeches, Paige spoke to a group of students at a local school, urging them to see the power they held in shaping the future. "You are the ones who will inherit this world. It is in your hands to protect it. Start small, in your communities, and know that your actions matter." Edward and Paige also emphasized the need for responsible business practices. They held meetings with corporate leaders, encouraging them to consider the long-term impact of their actions, advocating for green technologies and eco-friendly initiatives that could revitalize Denmark's economy while preserving its natural beauty. As they traveled throughout the kingdom, Edward and Paige saw the change they had hoped for begin to take root. Local communities planted trees in public spaces, farmers embraced more sustainable practices, and schools integrated environmental education into their curriculums. People from all walks of life began to speak out for the protection of their land, and there was a renewed sense of pride in Denmark's natural heritage. One evening, as Edward and Paige sat together in the royal garden, the sun dipping below the horizon, Paige turned to Edward with a smile. "Do you remember when we first arrived in Belavia and I was so unsure of what my place was here? I never imagined that we'd be standing here, not just as rulers, but as leaders in something so important." Edward took her hand, his gaze filled with gratitude. "I do, and I think that's what makes this journey so special. How we've both grown, how we found our place, not just as royals, but as partners in something that's bigger than all of us." Paige nodded, her heart full. "And the best part is that we're not alone in this. We're doing it together, with the people of Denmark, with the kingdom behind us. I think we've started something that will last." Edward squeezed her hand, a smile tugging at his lips. "I couldn't agree more. And together, we'll make sure this journey continues, for as long as it takes." Under the starlit sky, the two of them sat quietly, content in the knowledge that they had not only found their place in the world, but had inspired an entire kingdom to rise up and protect the beauty of the land that had always been theirs. With love as their foundation, they knew that no challenge would be too great, and that, together, they could overcome anything. The story of Edward and Paige was no longer just about a royal couple. It was a story of a kingdom united, standing side by side to protect the future of their world. The days following their return to Denmark were filled with a renewed sense of purpose for Edward and Paige. The whirlwind of speeches, meetings, and campaigns had inspired the people of their kingdom, but now it was time to return to the heart of their royal responsibilities. The daily tasks that came with ruling and ensuring the well-being of Denmark. The palace, once a place of grand ceremonies and high-stakes politics, now felt like the epicenter of a revolution, not just of the kingdom's future, but of their own relationship. The unity and strength they had found together, both personally and as a team, were the foundation upon which they would build their next chapter. Edward stood in the royal study, papers and reports scattered across the desk, his eyes focused yet calm. There was so much to be done, legislation to pass, agreements to make, relationships to navigate. But for the first time, he didn't feel overwhelmed. He felt equipped, grounded by the love and conviction that Paige had helped him discover. Paige entered the room quietly, a stack of letters in her hands. She paused for a moment, watching him work, her heart full. He looked different somehow, stronger, more at peace. He wasn't just a prince who carried the weight of his kingdom anymore. He was a partner, a leader with vision, and someone she could rely on in every moment. "Edward," she said softly, a smile playing on her lips. Edward looked up from the desk, his face lighting up at the sight of her. "Paige," he replied warmly, standing to greet her. "How's the meeting with the council?" "It went well," she said, handing him the letters. "They're on board with the next phase of the environmental initiative. there's still a lot of work to do, but it's progress. He took the letters, his fingers brushing against hers. Good. We'll make sure the momentum doesn't stop. They both knew that the task ahead of them was monumental. But there was a quiet confidence between them now. They had already faced challenges that seemed insurmountable and had come out stronger. Now, no matter what came their way, they would face it side by side, united in purpose. As the hours passed, Edward and Paige worked tirelessly, tackling the day's agenda. They met with ambassadors from neighboring kingdoms to discuss trade agreements, ensuring that Denmark's future remained prosperous. They attended meetings with the Royal Council, where they pushed forward plans for sustainable agriculture, healthcare reform, and education initiatives. Each decision, each step forward, was a reflection of their shared commitment to the future of Denmark. In the evening, they sat together in the royal dining room, enjoying a quiet meal. The grand halls of the palace had seen countless royal dinners, but tonight felt different. It was not about the titles or the expectations. It was about the two of them, working together as partners. I was thinking today, Paige said, her voice thoughtful, about everything we've done so far, and how, in the end, it always comes back to the people. The heart of our kingdom isn't the palace or the throne. It's the people who make it what it is. Edward nodded, his gaze soft. It's true. We don't lead by force. We lead by inspiring others to believe in something greater than themselves. And together, Paige, we're doing just that. Paige smiled, her heart swelling with pride. Together, she echoed, knowing that no matter what obstacles lay ahead, they would face them as one. That night, as they walked through the palace gardens under the stars, they reflected on their journey, on how far they had come and how much they had grown. The Kingdom of Denmark was no longer just their home. It was a living testament to the love and strength they had found in one another. Their royal duties would always be a part of their lives. But now they approached each task with a renewed vigor. With every challenge, there was a reminder that they had the power to change the future, not just for themselves, but for every citizen in their kingdom. And with each passing day, they knew that together there was no challenge they could not overcome, no trial they could not face. The love they shared, the bond they had forged, was their foundation, and with it, they were ready to face whatever came next. As they walked hand in hand back into the palace, they did so with a quiet confidence, ready to continue their journey, side by side, facing the future with renewed purpose and determination. Together, they could overcome anything. The grand ballroom of the palace was a sea of shimmering lights and soft music, the air thick with the promise of celebration. Tonight, Denmark was alive with joy as the kingdom came together for a grand ball in honor of Edward and Paige's leadership and the new chapter they had begun. The walls, draped in gold and velvet, seemed to glow with the warmth of the occasion, and the guests, nobles, diplomats, and beloved citizens filled the space with laughter and conversation. Edward and Paige stood at the top of the grand staircase, their eyes meeting for a moment that seemed suspended in time. Paige's gown, a delicate shade of emerald, sparkled in the light as she descended gracefully, her arm linked with Edward's. His royal attire, though regal, was understated, the warmth of his smile outshining anything he wore. Together they moved through the crowd, their presence drawing attention, but also exuding a sense of quiet unity. Tonight was more than just a ball. It was a celebration of their journey, of the battles they had fought, the challenges they had overcome, and the future they had built together. It was a moment to reflect on how far they had come, and to look ahead to the bright future that awaited them. As they reached the center of the ballroom, the music shifted, a soft waltz that beckoned them to the dance floor. Edward held out his hand to Paige, his expression tender. "Shall we?" Paige smiled, her heart swelling with love. "We shall." They moved seamlessly into the dance, their steps as natural as breathing. The world around them seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them in a bubble of warmth and connection. The soft strains of the music flowed around them, but in this moment it was just the two of them, together, stronger than ever. The guests watched, captivated by the love and grace that radiated from the royal couple. It was a dance not just of royalty, but of shared history, of two souls who had fought for their love and the future of their kingdom. As they twirled and glided across the floor, their smiles spoke of everything they had endured and everything they had yet to face, side by side. Paige's voice broke through the soft music, her words a whisper meant only for Edward's ears. "I never thought it would feel like this. After everything, I always wondered if we'd find our way. But now, standing here with you, I know we have." Edward's gaze softened, his eyes filled with love. "We always had a way, Paige. It just took us time to see it. Together, we are unstoppable." As the dance continued, the crowd joined in, swelling around them as the entire ballroom became a sea of movement and joy. The evening was full of laughter and merriment, of friends and family who had supported them through every step of their journey. It was a night for celebrating not just their love, but the love of an entire kingdom that had rallied behind them. The music swelled to a crescendo, and Edward twirled Paige one final time, pulling her close as the final note played. They stood there, in the heart of the ballroom, surrounded by those they loved and those who had supported their cause. In this moment, everything was perfect. As the music faded, Edward and Paige looked at each other, their hearts beating in unison. The world seemed to fall away, leaving only the promise of their shared future. With everything they had fought for, with every challenge they had faced, this moment, this dance, was the culmination of their journey. It was a symbol of their love, their unity, and the bright future they had forged together. The crowd erupted into applause, but Edward and Paige only had eyes for each other. They shared a final lingering kiss, a kiss that spoke of everything they had been through and everything that lay ahead. The ballroom doors opened wide, revealing the glowing night sky beyond, and the guests flooded outside to join in the celebration. Edward and Paige, hand in hand, followed the crowd into the courtyard. The stars above twinkled brightly, a reflection of the endless possibilities that lay before them. In that moment, as the night air was filled with the laughter and joy of their people, Edward and Paige knew that they had not only secured the future of their kingdom, but had also built a future together, one filled with love, hope, and the promise of brighter days. Together, they had faced the impossible, and together they would continue to dance through life, hand in hand, ready to face whatever the future held. The dance may have ended, But their story was only just beginning. As the night drew to a close, the soft glow of the palace lights flickered against the sky, casting a serene and peaceful warmth over Denmark. Edward and Paige, hand in hand, stood on the balcony of the palace, gazing out over the kingdom they had fought so hard to protect. The air was cool, but the warmth between them was undeniable, like the fire of their love that had fueled their journey from the very beginning. The stars above twinkled brightly, as if in celebration of their love, of all they had overcome and all they had yet to face. The sounds of the ball had faded into the distance, but the joy and laughter of the evening lingered in their hearts. This moment, this quiet, peaceful moment, was theirs. Edward looked down at Paige, his eyes filled with love and appreciation. "We've come so far," he said softly. "Through every challenge, every fear, every obstacle. We've come through it all, together." Paige's heart swelled, her gaze meeting his with quiet intensity. "And we'll continue to face whatever comes, together. This journey, it's never been about just me or just you. It's about us, about what we can do when we unite, when we love, and when we fight for what we believe in." Edward smiled, his thumb brushing gently over her hand. "And we will keep fighting, for each other, for our people, for this kingdom. But most of all, we'll keep loving." Paige nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek as she whispered, "I never imagined this life. I never imagined that love could transform everything, that it could change the world in ways I never thought possible. But with you, I've seen how powerful love really is. It has brought us to this moment." Edward leaned in, pressing his forehead gently against hers. "And it will carry us through whatever comes next." They stood together in the stillness of the night, knowing that their journey wasn't over. The future was full of possibilities, but they had already built something lasting. A bond unbreakable, a love unshakable, and a shared commitment to their kingdom and each other that would guide them through the years to come. As they embraced, the quiet promise of a future filled with love, laughter, and happiness seemed to echo in the air. They had fought for this, and now they were ready to live it. Side by side, hand in hand, committed to their happily ever after. The stars above glistened as if in acknowledgement, and in that moment, Edward and Paige knew. Their love had conquered all, and together, there was nothing they couldn't face. The end of one chapter marked the beginning of another, one full of joy, hope, and endless possibilities. And as they walked forward into the future, they did so with hearts full of love and the unwavering belief that together they could achieve anything. Their happily ever after had just begun.
The Stories book is a captivating collection of tales that traverse diverse genres and emotions, spanning the realms of fantasy, science fiction, romance, and mystery. Each narrative is a journey into the unexpected, weaving intricate plots and compelling characters. With a skillful blend of vivid imagery and thought-provoking themes, this anthology invites readers to explore the depths of imagination and discover the universal threads that connect us all. From heartwarming moments to spine, we hope you enjoyed these captivating video stories. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming content like this. Thanks for watching, and keep spreading the video story.